Today is Wednesday, November the 23rd, 2011. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm not. I'm Steve Stanley.
I'm Heath Mullican.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. The world's only user-antagonistic podcast. This is episode 133.
Woo!
All right, so this is Happy Thanksgiving Eve.
See.
So are you any of you guys going to do Black Friday stuff?
I haven't had any plans.
My plan is we have a lot of family coming in, and so I'm going to take my kids and my niece and my nephew to see the Muppet movie so all the parents can go. All the parents can go shopping.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to do anything because I've been preaching against mass consumerism, and I'm going to continue to do that until I get a raise.
So special Thanksgiving plans here. I mean, at the Casey house, we're having squirrel, so... You know, the traditional...
I
heard you're having like a squidurkin or something like that.
We're doing turducken, but I'm also doing squirrel
No,
as well.
stick the squirrel in there too. Well, explain what a turducken is first.
A turducken is a chicken inside of a duck inside of a turkey.
Yeah.
And then you have you layer between the
that.
meats different stuffings. So you have 3 different kinds of stuffings inside that as well. And then
I would like to suggest that you make it a squirkin, though. And throw
So
the
are they
squirrel in
dead
there,
when
too.
you do this, or do they cooperate before?
get in there.
Well, as most of you guys know, this past week, my 2 churches voted to merge, and so we had already planned Sunday night's big turkey fry. Well, there's a couple from one of the churches. They're professional cooks, like culinary, and he did the fried turkey.
I need to have them come for a
Cajun
revival.
fried turkey.
Good
Let me
stuff,
tell you,
huh?
yes, it was. I sinned in overeating, but I've asked for forgiveness.
It's called gluttony.
Well,
Okay.
I committed that
Such
sin.
a legalist, man.
No one likes you.
What a killjoy.
I bet you have something to say about our bacchanal, won't you?
All right. Hey, listen, we want to welcome Dr. Mark Gorveatte to the
Yes.
show today. He has served as the president of Kingswood University in Sussex, New Brunswick since 2010. Prior to his appointment by the Board of Trustees, Mark served the Wesleyan Church for over 25 years as a local church pastor and as a district superintendent of the Wisconsin and West Michigan districts. His strategic leadership yielded church growth and 20 new churches being planted in West Michigan during their tenure there. In recognition of his leadership and service to the church, Reverend Gorveatte was awarded an honorary Doctor of Theology degree by Indiana Wesleyan University in Indiana. Yes, in the state of Indiana. There you go. Passionate about kingdom advance. Reverend Gorveatte's vision at Kingswood is to equip Christ-like servant and servant leaders to make a global impact. Mark, so good to have you on the show today.
Thanks, guys. Great to be with you.
All right, so there's been a lot of recent activity up there. It was hard for me here to keep calling Kingswood because for many of us it's been Bethany Bible College. So talk to us why the name change and why Kingswood.
Well, the name change was driven by our mission, Tony. The joy we have today is we have graduates serving in 22 countries of the world.
Wow.
There are countries that are increasingly hostile to Christianity, and appearing at the immigration desk with Bethany Bible College on your diploma certainly doesn't make access to those countries any easier, particularly with our students in Muslim countries. And we heard their requests, and then we actually heard a direct plea from the Global Partners Department. They sent word. Of course, their director, H.C. Wilson, is our board chair. He made a rather compelling speech that if even one precious potential child of God there somewhere in a Muslim country doesn't get to hear the gospel because we were too stubborn to change our name, shame on us. We would give an account before God. And I think after that speech, it was a unanimous vote with no problem after that one. So. The other thing is, if we're going to change at all, what direction do we go with an increasingly flat online world? We discovered there were 7 or 8 other institutions named Bethany, including another one right here in Canada. I was inaugurated on the 24th of September 2010, and so was the president of the other Bethany, same hour, same day.
Wow.
So brand confusion, certainly in the marketplace, we want to be aware of that. The other piece was, if we're going to change, we wanted to make sure we had something strongly Wesleyan in our name, maybe without using Wesleyan as the middle name. For us, we'd not had that on our name badge here for 66 years, and whether we added that now. So we're looking for some things with story and explored some of those and found this wonderful connection with Kingswood as John Wesley's first college to train ministers there outside of Bristol. We love the missional story of Kingswood. It was in Bristol where George Whitefield had gone to preach and had been so effective. The crowds were overflowing, and the established church was obviously unsettled by that, so they locked the doors to him in Bristol, said you can't preach inside the buildings anymore. Someone mockingly said to George Whitefield, if this gospel really works, why don't you take it to the coal miners out in Kingswood? They're worse than heathen. Town of coal mining town marked by carousing, cursing, fighting, drinking. That was what they were known for. And Whitefield was never one to back down from a challenge, so he makes his way out to Kingswood, 2 or 3 miles outside of Bristol, preaches the gospel on a hillside. The first day, 200 miners stop to listen. Within weeks, there's more than 2,000 who are gathering. Whitefield's already committed to going to England to preach, to New England to preach. So he writes Wesley and asks Wesley to come pick up the torch there. Wesley was more of a traditionalist than Whitefield and really had real problems with this. In fact, Charles was afraid this would cause excommunication from the church. This would be such a break with tradition. But Wesley, thank the Lord, was a pragmatist, and he went down to see what's God doing, wanted to spy it out for himself, and discovered there an amazing work of God. So he picks up the mantle on April the 1st of 1739. He reads from the Sermon on the Mount to a small group and says, if Jesus could preach on a hill, I can too. The next day he mounts the hill there and preaches again to a crowd of 2,000. By summertime, crowds of 10,000 were recorded in Kingswood, and within a year that entire community had been transformed. Interesting note, as effective as Whitefield had been in preaching, he'd never organized the first discipleship effort. Within a week of Wesley preaching, he organized a small group for women and a small group for men, and historians record it as one of the most effective fields of ministry. We just love the concept of taking the gospel out of the box, reaching people who are farthest from God, making sure that discipleship strongly accompanies that. And within 10 years, they launched the first college. Kingswood College was established there, training leaders for the next generation. Those are powerful storylines that we resonate deeply with, and we think it's a story to be told. So that's how it happened for us.
Yeah, as an aside, Mark, I like to throw out this little statistic that some entrepreneurial guy has gone through history, church history, and has followed every documented revival, and they've given the average of how long a revival lasts in church history. And so the average is 6 months. Now, when you begin to realize the Wesleyan revival, and you talked about this whole thing of discipleship, the Wesleyan revival lasted for 50 years.
Yeah.
And the discipleship, there are many who believe it's the discipleship dimension to that that Wesley brings to the table that God uses to make that revival so successful, half a century.
Yeah, he preached there on Monday, and by Thursday night he'd organized the first group for women and next the group for young men before the week was out.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Dr. Gordon Smith, now he's a former vice president, academic dean up at Regent in Vancouver. I was in a class with him one time, and he said every Christian school has what he calls a charism. And by that he means it's a God-given niche, that institution came into existence because God wanted to do something in his kingdom that couldn't be done through another institution. And so if you had to look at Kingswood that way, what would you say that Kingswood charism is?
I think one of the unique things we bring, Tony, is that we were birthed out of the local church to serve the local church. Other colleges, liberal arts colleges, sometimes were established in some sort of a central location, invited people to come to them. And were established maybe not necessarily even in conjunction with the church itself, but the church was birthed out of that. In our case, it was in Woodstock, New Brunswick, actually in the parsonage of the Reformed Baptist Church, which, of course, they later merged with the Wesleyans in the 60s. But it was actually in the parsonage of the Reformed Baptist Church that 17 students gathered in 1945 to form the first class of what was then the Holiness Bible Institute. We've continued that same heartbeat. One of the things I was committed to as a district superintendent is there's probably two things we need to do for ourselves in a movement that no one else will do for us. One is plant our own churches. Can't count on the Free Methodists or the Nazarenes or the Baptists to plant Wesleyan churches. But that's going to happen. We've got to do it. Second is we've got to train our own leaders. Occasionally we can adopt a few, and we do that, and I thank God for them. But for the most part, if we want to have a next generation in the movement, we've got to be committed to training up our own leadership for that movement. This is certainly an expression of that, and it was so evident there in Woodstock as they started. And today, there's only one thing we do. We train servant leaders for the church, serve in the church, the local church, or alongside the church, and that's all we do.
One of the things that's already coming out here in this interview, Mark, is you really have a passion for missional ministry and the missional church. Now, you're going to be down here in South Carolina in just a few weeks at our pastor's gathering, and we've entitled that gathering the missional church. That can mean different things to different people, and so why don't you tell our listeners a little bit your passion in terms of the missional church, and also get into your years there at the West Michigan District and what you guys saw God do there.
Sure. Well, I would argue first that there is no such thing as a non-missional church. There may be religious societies that gather, but there is no such thing as a non-missional church. To be the church is to be missional. It's to be sent. I don't think there's anything original that I can contribute to the conversation, but we're here on purpose. Jesus came as a missionary. His body continues that mission in word and deed. We're going to be known with the fruits of that. That's essential for me. I love to read the New Testament, particularly Acts. I don't see a prescriptive church, but I see a descriptive church, and I see disciples being made, barriers being broken, ethnic barriers being broken, caring for the poor, and no kind of artificial division like, oh, well, we're a socially conscious church. Oh, no, we're evangelistic. I mean, how are those two things not the same? And Wesley, I think one of the genius parts of the Wesleyan revival is he married those or didn't allow them to become divorced.
Absolutely.
So those would be the impulses. Servant leadership for us characterizes the kind of leadership that gets its hands dirty, that's in the game. For example, we're the only Wesleyan college that requires a full semester of internship in the local church or in the ministry model that you're going to be serving in when you graduate. We just don't think you can learn it all in a classroom. Experiential learning is critical for that. Mm-hmm. And it's the overflow of, it's an overflow of a deep love with Jesus. If you're not leading from a broken heart, either you're not living close enough to God or you're not living close enough to real people. Mm-hmm. And we want our students to have both of those things. So very passionate worship in chapel, absolutely. I mean, off the hook, great chapel services. But Wednesday afternoon when classes are out, we've got kids who, on their own, started a thing called Deeply Rooted, and they leave the campus to go down and serve, whether it's raking leaves or carrying out trash. They knock on doors in neighborhoods in poor parts of the town and say, hey, how can we serve you? We're here to just express God's love in practical ways. And that wasn't a faculty or staff-led. That's the overflow, the legitimate overflow of a worshiping heart. So those would be some of the pieces for me. How did that play itself out in West Michigan? I think the church planting impulse really flows from that. Are there any people in your community that your church is not ideally suited to reach? Is your church perfectly positioned to reach every single person in your community? And most churches have to confess, no, there's some folks we reach easier, more effectively than others. I mean, we'd welcome them all, but the reality is not everybody feel welcome. Yeah. Even if we put out a welcome sign, y'all come, there's some folks in town, if they came to our church, either we're too up or too down on the social economic ladder, or we're too formal or too informal. It takes all kinds of churches to reach all kinds of people. And what we argued for our churches is then if there are people that you know that you're not ideally positioned to reach, then are you just content to let them go to hell, or are you prepared to do something about it? So whether that meant reaching people in a town 5, 10, 15 miles away through 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of traffic who might visit on Sundays, but they'd never really get involved in the outreach of the church or in small group life, then that's a community you really ought to think about planting a church in. Or if you're a church that's mainly middle class Caucasian, and there's a whole community just 3 miles away from you that are Hispanic or urbanites, and you're not going to do a great job of reaching them, you can't just wash your hands of that. God's got a part for you to play. So a church like Kentwood, which was an amazing and diverse church, also recognized the need for an inner city urban church like The Edge, a hip-hop church planted by Troy Evans, or a City Life Church, which was a church among the working poor, planted by Adam and Christy Lipscomb. So for us, it's just this natural flow. We want to see every person reached, and we'll use whatever means God gives us to do that. And planting new churches to reach new people groups, new communities, and next generations, to me, is the mandate that we've all been handed. So let's get about the task and get her done.
What's interesting to me about West Michigan is the paradigm, correct me if I'm wrong, was to plant churches or launch churches from churches, not the district necessarily going out and doing that. Am I right there, or does it need to be nuanced a little bit?
Yeah, I think the district has a responsibility to foster that, to resource that, to do everything it can to create systems to help churches succeed at that. I think it's an abdication of our responsibility to simply say, hey, church planting is a local church's responsibility. If it's not happening, it's your fault. We didn't go there. But the flip side of that, the other extreme is for the district say, no, church planting is our deal. And, oh, by the way, we're planting one next door to you. Sorry you didn't know about it, but we've already decided it, and it's going to happen. And we actually saw cases, both of those extremes as we looked at other districts. We really engaged our local pastors and asked them this question. If you were going to plant a church, and you had to be at least 5 miles from your church, but you could be as close as 5 miles, and knowing the people groups that you know and knowing the movements and demographics around here, where would you plant a church?
Yeah.
And if you can see the need, if there's a need like that, then why wouldn't your church help to meet that need now? Why would you have to leave to do that? Why not dream with us about what that could look like? And to really engage them then in the planning process early on, the district churches, the local church pastors identified what they saw as hot spots, potentials for church planting. We like to make the argument if there's enough people for McDonald's, there's got to be enough people for a Wesleyan church.
Oh, that's good.
So that was fun. And they identified early on 13, 14 hot spots where not only could they see the need, but they could see a way that their church could be involved in helping to meet that need by praying, by paying, by putting some dollars on the table, and by playing, by getting some boots on the ground, getting people involved, whether it's community serving, or in one case, a church drove 15 miles every Sunday morning for the first 3 months of a church plant and staffed the entire children's ministry to help that team get launched.
You say that why wouldn't a local church want to do that? Why wouldn't they want to be a part of it? Now, here's the sad reality, Mark. You know as well as I do that sometimes churches don't want to be a part of that. How do we, at the local church level, how do we get to that place? And how? I mean, what can happen to wake up a church to help them to be missional or to see? At least to be part of something that is beyond themselves.
Well, it again comes for me simply back to this: are you that much in love with Jesus, and are you that much aware of the needs of people? Jesus said to his own disciples, "Lift up your eyes, look and see the harvest." Sometimes we haven't even done that, and so to ask that question of local church boards was one of my roles, to come in and say, who are the people that you're best at reaching? Help them be honest about that. When they look around the table, they're all pretty much like each other for the most part, most churches. Who are the people who've come most recently to your church in the last year or two? Who are the people who came who didn't come back? Why do you think that was? Who are the people in this community that, as far as you know, they don't go to church anywhere? And what are the issues or life stories that maybe this church is not ideally suited to care for? Are some of those your kids, your grandkids, your co-workers? I mean, when you put names and faces to it, if we don't care about lost people, we've got bigger problems than church planting. So,
Right.
But if it's there, then to help people say, okay, if you're broken for those people, then let's help build systems, structures that help the church to win. Because some churches have tried and failed. Some pastors have tried and failed. And Mark Twain said a cat that sits on a hot stove won't sit on a hot stove again, but it won't sit on a cold stove either. Some churches had a bad experience, and now they don't want to try it again. But I think that's what we can do as district leaders or networks, is to offer hope, provide systems, support, and structure that enable those churches to get in the game and to win. And there's nothing, like momentum to get those first few wins under your belt like Clemson did. So that's all good.
That's right. But some of you watching today may not realize Dr. Gorveatte is a graduate of Southern Wesleyan, so he is well aware. He was probably here during the glory days, which we're trying to regain.
Basketball and soccer. Yeah, we used to win a few games in those days.
Dr. Gorveatte, let me ask you a question from my personal perspective. I was pastoring 2 churches. We just merged, and our first service together is this Sunday.
Bless you.
Part of the vision of our church is we were part of the first church plants in the district back in 1893.
Wow.
And so our vision is to restart the church planting movement in the district. And so how do we go from, we've got that excitement now, but what would you say, hey, this is the first thing that you need to do so that, 5 years, 3 years, that church planting mentality, and that first church plant is becoming a reality for us.
I'd put it in your budget, and I'd put it on your prayer list.
Done.
You know, that's where your priorities are. If you put even 1% in your budget, and every year when you have your congregational meeting, your leadership team looks at it, and they say, well, what's that money growing in that little pile? Oh, that's our church planting seed fund. Well, don't we need new carpet in the Sunday school room? Yeah, but that's our church planting seed fund.
Yeah.
And to begin to pray. You know, we asked our partner churches there once a month at least to pray publicly for the church planting efforts that they were closest to. So if that was a church planting in next door, or if in this case, if praying for Wayne and Amy downstate, and just keep that before the people in prayer. And God, we pray today for our church planters. Thank you, Lord, that there's people who need Jesus, and we're going to do whatever it takes to reach them. And thank you that you bless church planting as an expression of the overflow of what you're doing in this place. So we just pray for them today.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you saying that we're not in competition with other Wesleyan churches?
Tony, I haven't been to South Carolina for a while, so tell me what's the new reality, brother?
Now we actually less than half a mile from our church, which we have a very traditional building, a church plant that had been meeting in various schools in our community actually just bought this huge dock building, and so somebody was talking about that. I'm like, oh man, you know, and I'm like, there's plenty of lost people in this community for both churches. And everybody just kind of changed their tone, like, you know, you're right. And so, you know, we're looking forward to working with them. And but I envy you and totally understand what you're going through with changing the name and making changes and taking Wesleyan out of Bible and all that stuff.
Mark, do you think that sometimes the church probably suffers a little bit from lack of reality check? I know that the last few years that I was pastoring, one of the things that really struck me, I started to get into demographics, and I found out that from 1990 to the year 2000, I was working with that census at the time, that going through data, stuff of this nature, found out that there were more people on any given Sunday, percentage-wise, going to church in the state of Wisconsin than they were in South Carolina. In South Carolina, in our county, it was less than every 3 out of 10 people were attending church. And you've lived down here in the Bible Belt, right. And I know that was a shocker to me. And I think that as I kept throwing that stat out, it was a shocker to other people around me. Isn't part of this that we kind of get insulated? And we get inward, and until we, to use your analogy, lift up our eyes, we're going to kind of stay in that state.
Yeah, and Max Dupree's word to leaders is your first responsibility is to define reality. And I think whether it's stats or anecdotes, you know, I was in the grocery store this week, and I just asked a person, "Hey, I'm new to town. What churches are really reaching people in this community? Where should I go?" And they said, "I don't know of any." You know, those kind of stories are powerful. We did the same thing when I was pastoring New Hope in North Dakota. Went to the town there, and my board early on said, "Well, you know, everybody in town already goes to church." I said, "Really? This is the most unusual church in America. You know, the most unusual community. I need to know about this." So my secretary and I actually got on the phone that year. We called every church, asked them for their attendance the last Sunday, and then we asked them for their seating capacity.
Nice.
What we discovered was in a town of 13,000, there had been less than 4,000 people in church the previous Sunday. So there's 9,000 people who weren't there, not assuming that all 4,000 were saved or that all 9,000 were lost, but somewhere in there, there's certainly a fishing pond. The other thing we discovered, there were just over 6,000 seats. So if everybody wanted to come to church in that town, they'd have to have 2.5 services, and most churches were just barely holding one. So that defining reality is a critical role for a leader, whether you're in a local church or in the district or at a college. Yeah. You know, what's true today, and what's the opportunity? What's the burden that God's put in our heart? What's the potential? And let's move toward it.
Very good. Listen, before we get done with this, I want to kind of dovetail back into Kingswood and what excites you or what encourages you about the present student body that you see and this generation right now, which is going through education.
You know, I really love the heart. There's a level of passion and openness. I mean, candidly, there's a level of brokenness that surprises me. A lot of our kids have come from, broken homes or some really bad choices they made in their teen years or early adult. life. So there's a lot of brokenness, but as God redeems, there's amazing grace, and there's this passion level on our campus that I'm just absolutely thrilled about, and a willingness, again, to get their hands dirty. They want to get in the game. They want to serve. They want to love. They want to express God's grace to people in very practical ways. So, we had a group in prison last night. It's been fun. Some of our kids who've never been in prison ministry before, we have consistently have teams going out. And a girl got to share her faith and lead someone to Christ in a prison, and she didn't have any idea that could actually happen. So just to see their love for Jesus and their love for lost people on this campus is just off the hook. Our goal is that every year we'll be sending out multiple teams of people who graduate together to go plant churches, and we're seeing that happen. Team getting ready to go to Calgary this year. I've got a guy coming in, actually a leader from down south who's coming into my office on Friday who wants to talk about what's it look like to be a church planter. We're the only college in the Wesleyan Church currently that offers a major in church planting as a degree program, and we hope that all of them will. So we're all about that, and I love that. I love the team we've got. Dr. David Smith, tremendous gift to us from Indiana Wesleyan as our academic dean, but he's more than that. He's a pastor, a theologian, and just mentors and disciples. To be part of a team like that, 100% of our faculty are Wesleyans. 70% of our students are Wesleyans. There's no more Wesleyan place that I know on the planet. We're more Wesleyans than Wesleyan churches, I think.
That's right.
So it's a great place to be, and I'm excited for what God's doing.
Yeah, wow, 100% Wesleyan faculty. Yeah, that catches me there. I didn't know that.
70% Wesleyan students.
Wow, that is a high percentage. Well, Mark, we thank you so much. We know you have a busy schedule, and we appreciate that you took time out to talk with us. Again, if there's someone listening to this podcast, downloading it later, and tuning in with us, where can they go to find out more about Kingswood?
Kingswood.edu.
All right. Listen, personally, we're looking forward to having you down here in a few weeks. And just anticipating a great time with you and our pastors. Blessings to you, to Kingswood, and to your family.
Hey, thanks, Steve, Heath, Tony. Thanks for the good work you guys do, and we're looking forward to being with you down there in South Carolina. It's going to be a blast.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye-bye.
All right. Oh, man, what a great guy.
He just needs a little more passion.
A little more passion. Yeah, if you've been around Mark before, you know.
High energy, better than a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And I love his heart. I mean,
wonderful.
That's essential for that kind of a ministry, I would think, anymore, especially if you're going to lead students to be missional, to have eyes for the world that's around them. You've got to exhibit that, and he has across the span of his ministry. Yeah. It's great to hear somebody talking the talk who's also walked the walk and still doing it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. He's demonstrated this.
There are moments in every organization's life. I think back to my time at Southern Wesleyan, and Dr. David Spittle came in, and just what a shot in the arm he was and got us going. And I see what Dr. Gorveatte's doing and the great legacy of leadership that was there at Bethany and now Kingswood. And he's just, somebody's always, wherever you're at, somebody's always gone before you and laid groundwork. Yeah. May not be the best all the time, but you just got to take it and run with it. And just what he's doing, it's an exciting time to be a Wesleyan for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you talked about the energy that Spittle brought. Now we're seeing Voss come in with that same kind of initial energy, and you can see how God's timing for Spittle, but now you see that God's timing
different
for Voss.
Manifestation under
Absolutely.
Voss. I mean, it's
totally
very uniquely his own,
but
a wonderful, refreshing entree.
Yeah,
Steve, I in the back of my mind, I was thinking during the interview with Mark of a conversation you and I have had ongoing for 5 or 6 years now, and that is that the need. I don't know. This is going to sound too strong, maybe, but the need for a Bible college. Now, I support why they took Bible out of the college name.
Sure.
You get that. So I'm not saying you have to have that in the name, but the concept of a Bible college.
A school of ministry within every university that majors in a 2-year course. Now, it has several benefits, and among them, you have control over the curriculum, and you have the best professors teaching it, and you also get to know who's in ministry under you. But not every pastor is destined for First Church. Some of them are going to start a storefront, or they're going to be in a shopping center, or it's going to be a small group kind of cell church iteration. But by doing this, we would not only equip those who are coming in as second career ministers, but we would also attract, I believe, a number of people from other denominations who want a quality, Bible-centered curriculum, and we would begin to influence those other denominations with the concepts and expose them to the ideals of Scripture as we understand it. I just think it would be healthy all the way around. Wouldn't detract from anything that our colleges, universities are
and we're
offering.
not, and this is not a conversation against liberal arts.
No, absolutely
we
not.
understand. Matter of fact, this idea where we separate everything secular and Christian, that bifurcation has hurt us a lot.
Right.
So it's not an argument against that, but
we're talking about training for ministry,
right?
Here. And some guy that maybe he has 50 to 100 people that he can influence. You look around us, it's not hard to find other denominations that do this, but they have no training for those pastors, or little training for those pastors. They're ordained by local churches. There's no overarching control over the values and beliefs and practices of, and so you get, I heard a conversation where one of our professors was talking about a man who's quite significant in this area in another denomination, who said that we have hands because God has hands, physical hands like we've got. Well, this would surprise 1800, 1900, 20 centuries of the church to hear this kind of stuff, and you're going to get that as long as you don't have a way to inform the understanding and explain the importance of the historic faith of the church. God is spirit. They that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. We believe Jesus was incarnated in a body, but God the Father and God the Holy Spirit are not so. So, it's just important that you have that kind of influence over a generation of pastors. We're seeing everywhere, let me just stay on my soapbox one more second, the after effects of the 1980s, where you had all of this, I'm a preacher, you're a preacher, wouldn't you like to be a preacher?
To be a preacher too?
and this kind of thing that, the Holy Spirit works through me as well as anyone else. There have always been methods for training God's people for this kind of ministry and service, whether it was rabbinical schools, or it was the school of the prophets before that, or throughout history, monasteries and other things where the Word of God was taught, faithful people passing it down to faithful people to lead the flock of God.
And the Bible college experience is an immersive one, where this is really what we're boring down, ministry, and I still think there's a place for it.
And to have the component he's got.
Yeah.
Drop them into real-world situations with people whose hearts are beating at the same rhythm and the same drive.
That was one of the things that Matthew put his thumbs up during that time.
I remember being on ministry team at Southern Wesleyan, and when we get to run into the guys from Bethany, the guys and girls, just generally. But anyways, talking with them about their one-year internship experiences and things, and just saying, wow, and envying that a bit, saying, man, I kind of feel like I'm missing something now,
Right.
And I wouldn't trade anything for my experience at Southern Wesleyan, especially the influence of Dr. Bob Black on my life. It was transformational. But having said that, again, you almost, in some circles that I've been, there's almost a negative connotation that's given towards Bible college, and it's unfair. And the immersive experience that you get, and I think there is still a place for it, and it's something that should not be minimized. If anything, the opposite, it should be promoted. All right, well, let's move on to...
come on!
There it is!
Download of the week.
Our download of the week is...
Brought to you by Homer Simpson.
Agent Ransack. I know nothing about Agent Ransack, but Steve Stanley does.
I'm always losing files on my hard drive. and I'll remember.
It's because your hard drive's been ransacked by a program called Agent Ransack.
I can't believe that you would speak evil of dignities in this fashion. And what this is a GREP. Some of you may be familiar with the old terminology, GREP program. It's a program that searches your hard drive. You can search within it for a collection of words, a word that is somehow close to another word there, or you can search for file names as well. It's not
it's comprehensive C drive.
Yeah. And if I can remember, say John Wesley and Kingswood, and put those in the search, it's going to find that document on my hard drive, no matter where it is, and it's fast.
Now, this is a Windows program?
It's a Windows program,
because
yes.
in Mac, there's something built in called Spotlight Search, which is it's the exact same thing. Like, I can search into documents, even into PDF documents, just by typing little bits and pieces.
And there is with Windows too, but it's not. I doubt whether Macs is as sophisticated as this, and I know that Windows is not. So at least we'll be helping 90% of the computing
Steve has thrown
world.
down the gauntlet.
That's right. We need
Did
to have
you hear
a
what
test.
I said?
Yes,
You didn't hear what I
we
said?
need to have a test. We need to throw the same file.
No, you didn't hear what I
on each
said.
computer.
I said at least we'll be helping 90% of the computing world.
So,
Ta-dum-ta!
if you'd like to have your hard drive ransacked,
Help me out, Heat.
Yeah, grab our link, and you can have your hard drive ransacked.
if you'd like your computer to operate like Steve Stanley,
It is a beautiful program.
This
I'm
is
not
awful
teasing
because
This program is as beautiful as Matthew teaching.
Steve gets
there,
here
now
at
I like
8:15, boots his computer up, and by 5 till 9, it's up and ready to. No, Steve.
I hope my feelings aren't hurt today. I mean, normally, you're nice to the turkey before you kill it.
That's the line.
well, not today, man.
Yeah. What would tell us again about this animal, this creature you have? I want to hear more about that. Where you stick something inside of something and something inside of something. What was that?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I am.
It's called a turducken. That's what we're having for Thanksgiving. It's a chicken inside of a duck inside of a turkey.
when you're filthy rich, you can afford these kinds of luxuries.
Is it born in by 12 servants?
Hey, quick question: is anyone else's Google Doc going crazy? Is it just mine?
Just yours.
Okay,
I have a Windows PC,
so I'm not going to be able
to.
to participate, and they said it, so it's going to be.
Oh, I got you. I got you covered here. I can see. I'll read your line.
All right,
yeah, absolutely.
all right.
So you ready?
Let's
Ready.
do it.
Let's do it.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in
That's
creating
my
the
favorite.
internet.
The Macintosh,
I saw a
of
guy
all the
walking up
machines
looking
I've
like
ever
this.
seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
We were able to find that in 3 of these patients, so nearly 20% of the group of patients that we assessed, it was possible to detect that these patients were actually aware. They were able to follow the commands that we were giving them, despite the fact that to all external appearances, they appeared to not be aware at all. Researcher Dr. Adrian Owen of the Center for Brain and Mind at the University of Western Ontario, who has shown up to 20% of those in a vegetative state have awareness. Source CBC News.
Every major shade of religious belief was represented, including Christianity, Judaism, Islam, agnosticism, and atheism. And both the left and right in American politics were present. They all agreed that there is a substantial, multi-dimensional, empirical record of the harms pornography brings to society. Obviously, such agreement is rare. Sean McDowell, in an article he wrote entitled The Hidden Price of Porn, source ChristianLeaders.com.
Tebow, regardless of whether I wish he'd just shut up after a game and go hug his teammates, well, I think he's a winner, and I respect that about him. Former Denver Broncos quarterback Jake Plummer expressing his desire that Tim Tebow not be so vocal about his faith in Jesus Christ. Source, The Sporting News.
STDs are one of the most critical health challenges facing the nation today. Researchers at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. Source, USA Today.
All right.
Where to begin?
Sorry for the background music there. a couple of these things. The very first one that Heath read, we just got out of a whole bioethics Sunday school curriculum and issues of, when are people alive, when are they dead, got into issues of brain dead. And so I think Matthew actually found this article, and in this little test here, they came up with something that was able to determine that you had 3 people at least in this test who seemed to be in a vegetative state, but found out that they were well aware.
Right.
And so, this has huge implications, impact on end-of-life issues. And, I don't know if this helps us. Does this clarify, or does this muddy the water?
Well,
what if Terry Schiavo had been one of those 3?
Yeah, and that's the really good question. With this technology, you start using it. I think like my initial reaction is, wow, this is great. You're finally able to tell and remove that question. That's, for me, that's the big thing, because while I don't want this to sound heartless, but while 20% are found to be that, there's families that for all 100% of these people have the question, what's going on?
Yes.
And is my loved one
right
there or not? And for 80% of the families to be able to, as devastating as it would be to be able to say no, that what a relief and a burden lifted off of them it would be when the time comes that the plug would have to be pulled. For the huge majority, what a relief. Then the question becomes, well, what do you do with the 20%?
Yeah.
How long do you continue to do this? But I think overall, this would be a help as I see it.
It helps to bring some clarity.
Yeah.
In decision making for family members. The story that Steve read here, this one to me is powerful.
Yes.
Especially if you go to the link that we give you, track down this story in its original source. What you have here is more than just Christian leaders who are talking about the concerns about pornography on the culture. You have broad scale. You have agnostics. You have people who are not religious who are in agreement. And to me, it's refreshing, because a lot of times the church is just presented as just a prudish bunch of people who are against, who want to throw up rules and roadblocks in people's lives. And this story kind of dovetails into the story of the Centers of Disease as well, talking about the challenges that sexually transmitted diseases pose to our culture. I kind of thought when reading these articles, this reminds me of Keith Drury when, I heard him years ago say that the church doesn't need to speak on smoking anymore because the Cancer Society does a way better job than we ever did.
Right. Here's the thing. They said it every week, and a lot of times, man, just great stories. But I read this one, and it's just like, duh. STDs are one of the most critical health challenges facing. Really? Somebody's getting paid to, hey guys, I think this is an epidemic. Good grief. I remember hearing Josh McDowell speak on this several years ago at a youth event, just talking about the explosion of, of course I can't even remember the name of it, of cervical, of the STD that leads to cervical cancer for females, that it was through the roof. The numbers and the statistics were just staggering. And I don't know what it is about people today, because it's not just young people, but it's like they just throw caution to the wind. It's like people live, this is an understatement, people live as if there are no consequences, whether that's an unwanted pregnancy or an STD or whatever the case may be. And I look at this story on STDs, and I directly link it to the epidemic of porn in our society.
Right.
When you look at this, if you go to the story that we post, they refer to this report by the Weatherspoon Institute. Now, listen, and here's what I love, because there's a very biblical dimension to this. One of the paragraphs, or the leading paragraph, theorists of public morality, from the ancient Greek philosophers and Rome jurists on, have noticed that apparently private acts of vice, when they multiply and become widespread, can imperil important public interests. And here's the thing, isn't this exactly what we have been preaching, this concept in the Scriptures that there are no private acts, that what I do impacts other people.
Right.
And so Christianity doesn't know a concept of isolated Christianity. It is the body of Christ. And my actions have ramifications for those around me. And to see this message coming out from something other than the church is refreshing.
Oh, yeah. Well, for a long time, feminists have been on our side in this. They've said it. But
sure.
But then once the type of porn began to change and that you began to see what they call feminist porn, then you heard those voices dying down. What we know now is that Jim Dobson, who is a wonderful man, in my opinion, has done so much good for the kingdom. No man would you agree with 100% of the time anyway. No woman, but you'd never say that out loud if you're married to her. But he made a statement that when he said it, I knew it to be false. He said, women are not affected by porn. He said, occasionally you'll see a woman who's involved in it on account of her husband. And now the latest statistics I read just last week are that at least a quarter of women, all women, have not only viewed it, but have an ongoing relationship with it. By themselves, that's even without a partner being around. And so the issue is this stuff is corrosive. If you say, well, I could never be affected by that or by a host of other sins, then you have to ask yourself why the Bible would warn against them. If we were immune to them, there'd be no need for a warning. Yep. So we have to keep speaking lovingly, faithfully, and truthfully the message of Christ. One of the things that has always cautioned me about dealing with subjects like this or adultery or greed or any of the 7 deadly sins and the others that seem to be less deadly, it just make you sick a while, I guess, but is the fact that Galatians 6:1 says, if a brother's overtaken in a fault, if someone is caught up in one of these things, you who are living in the life of the Spirit, you who are perfect, it says. It's talking about you that you're at the right stage of development for where you are in Christ. Restore them, considering yourself. Right. Think about yourself because you can also be tempted. The implication is the thing that trapped them could trap you. And if not that thing, then something else.
Well, if you're in ministry, grab this, grab the link. There's some great stuff here.
Can I also mention another resource that we were talking about before the show? Because another
this isn't that print your own money, is it? No. I mean, like you were talking about before the show.
The Resurgence blog did a very similar post very recently. I mean, within the past couple days, on the issue of pornography and how it is destructive, the destructive effects of it. And they pulled from a chapter of an ebook that they give away. So you can get it for free here, okay? Called Born Again Christian.
Oh,
yeah.
Put the link up for that, will you?
I will try to find it to get it into our show notes.
Born Again Christian.
Born Again Christian.
I want to go back to the first article before we jump ahead to the next article we're going to take, and that's about this brain dead and all. Just last week, I was reading a scholarly paper in the 1800s where a guy cut the brains out of chicks, little baby chicks, because it was his belief that whatever it is that makes a baby chick follow as its mother, whatever it's first exposed to, must be in the brain and not located somewhere else in the function of the body. Well, after cutting the brains out of them, his report says decerebrated chicks do not respond to stimuli. You think about that. As I was reading it, if you took my brain out, I'd probably stop responding to stimuli too.
That's what we mean by brain dead. Heath, you're a big sports fan. How did you react to Jake Plummer this week in his comments?
I'll be honest. I just heard bits and pieces of it until we were reading about it. You have to know Jake Plummer has always kind of been out there. As far as a player, he kind of retired very abruptly, and so when I hear Jake Plummer say anything about anything, I kind of take it with a little bit of grain of salt. I do think, this has been the controversy of the season. It has not just been Tebow's quarterbacking, but his
He
faith.
is probably the most public about his faith of any player that I've ever seen in my life. I've been following football since the mid-'70s, and I would say in my lifetime he's the most public. He's very vocal about his faith.
Right. Kurt Warner was very vocal, but you're right. Tebow. And here's the thing. Us as Christians, we all a lot of times feel really bad for Tebow. Man, I wish they weren't doing that. But that's what it looks like. You look at what Jesus said and you look at the scriptures. That's what it looks like. And I think we all admire Tim Tebow, but we're like, man, I would. But you know what?
He's unashamed, and
he's unashamed. And when you are unashamed, people are going to take their shots. And Tim Tebow, I know he did. His response to Jake Plummer's comment was, if I love my wife, and do I just tell her on our wedding day, I love you? Or do I tell her every day? And do I tell everybody every day that I love my wife? He said, that's how my relationship with Jesus is. I want everybody to know every day that I love him. And here's the thing. I talked about this Sunday at church, my son can probably throw a football better than Tim Tebow, and my son is 4 years old. But the thing is, Tim Tebow at every
Do you realize
level,
how many agents will be calling your house?
Yes. And I'll work out a deal with all of them. But at every level of football, despite what some people would say, physical limitations as far as being a quarterback, Tim Tebow has won at every single level. Now, admittedly, the Denver Broncos right now are not running anywhere near a pro-style offense, but he is 4-1 as a starter. He has led multiple late-game comeback. And to be honest, he's had to lead late-game heroics because he has stunk it up the first three quarters. But he finds a way to win. And so at the end of the day, I mean, how many guys? Jeff George, a great guy. Jeff George, if you put him and Tim Tebow throwing the football next to each other, you'd say, "Oh, we want Jeff George."
But you don't have to make that comparison.
Right.
The Denver Broncos just cut
Kyle
Orton. Now, here's local sports talk personality Walt Deptula. This is what he said before. This was last week. He said Kyle Orton throws a better spiral. He's got a stronger arm. He's more accurate. He can get out of. He's more elusive. And he said, but the difference between he and Tebow is that Tebow is a winner. Orton is a loser. and that's what. And that's just the way that he put it.
Right. This is the thing that shocked me reading the story about Orton, is you have Kyle Orton, who has never done anything in professional football. He's been a starter. He's always been mediocre. He's never led a team anywhere. He makes $9 million a season.
I didn't know that.
$9 million. And I pray. I am not a huge Broncos fan. I'm a Cowboys fan. And some other teams. I like a lot of teams.
I was gonna say, and some other teams. That's the understatement of the century.
Got that Badger shirt on.
That's what I'm saying.
Which I'm proud of.
Understatement of the century. You like every team.
But here's the thing. I pray.
I love you, Heath.
I really hope the Broncos.
You root
win
for
it
them.
all.
That's it. I root for them.
Let me tell you, the couple of weeks ago, the Thursday night game, ratings through the roof.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that the night they beat the Jets?
At the Raiders. I think they played the Raiders.
Oh.
I don't know. You guys know me. I don't really keep up with football.
I don't know you, man.
I keep up with my fantasy
quickly
team.
here. Let's move on. Last story. Sorry, captain of the plane is occupied right now. Did you guys hear about this? I think, Steve, you're the first one. I mean, this made all the outlets, but somehow it seemed like Steve knew before anyone else.
Well, the captain called me, and I mean, I'm locked in here.
If you haven't heard this story, the airline pilot gets the captain of the plane gets in the bathroom and somehow gets locked in, and so he's pounding on it, gets someone outside in the cabin to say, "Hey, go up and tell them in the cockpit that I'm locked here in the bathroom. I can't get out." So the spokesman that they get is someone who has an accent, so non-English.
Yeah.
And so they're saying someone in the bathroom, they can't get out. You know, and so
I need you to open the door.
No.
And so, So now the pilot, the one who's acting pilot, hears the accent and is thinking, "Oh no, this is a terrorist thing." And so it turns into
and that's
an
what
ordeal.
he's radioing in. I got some kind of situation. I may need to be cleared to land here, you know. And so they're asking him, "Do you need to land? And finally he figures out, no, it's just a pilot's locked in the restroom. I mean, that would be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
My question, did he get his pilot's license revoked? Because if you cannot get out of an airplane bathroom, I don't think you're qualified.
You don't want him flying your plane.
I mean, it's just like if you're going to be a pastor, you got to learn how to pour grape juice in those little bitty cups.
You can escape from a plane on water. You can come down the little slicky slide if it's belly up. Now, your last test here, we're going to put you in the bathroom.
You're going into John. Can you get out?
If you can't get out.
Sometimes they're so small I can't even get into them.
All right. Well, listen, just want to remind you what's coming up in the future. On December the 7th, we got Dr. Joanna Lyon, who will be with us.
He's a prophet.
Who's a prophet?
You're telling us the future.
Yeah, well, you know. And if you pay me money, I'll give you other predictions.
You and Harold Camping.
Let me think. I'm thinking that you're going to acquire some debt here in the next 6 weeks. I just see that coming.
I don't want that kind of prophecy.
Yeah. On the 14th, we've got Dr. Todd Voss in studio. He's the new president at Southern Wesleyan. Yeah, great guy, high energy. Yeah. And just bringing a lot of wonderful things to Southern Wesleyan.
A real person, too.
Yeah.
I mean, really, an authentic.
He is.
The tallest president in the history of the school.
Whoa. Heath, you come out with this trivia that is just mind-blowing.
Well,
man.
I think Steve's is more mind-blowing that he's the first real person president we've had. I didn't realize Spittle was a robot. I mean,
no, I did not say.
I kind of see it in hindsight, but I didn't.
I didn't realize
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No,
that was a joke.
I want to totally disavow any relationship that I may have had with any comments that Reverend T.G. is casting about.
All right, and then when we start the new year, a guy named Mark Batterson, January the 4th, is going to be with us.
Another great.
January the 12th, now get this on your calendar. That week, we are not doing our regular time. It's going to be a Thursday podcast at 1 o'clock. We have a pastor's gathering. We normally cancel that week. And then Kim, when she got back with me, Kim Meyer, who will be our guest, she said that she can't do Wednesdays because of a staff meeting. So that week, we're going to move our podcast Thursday, 1 in the afternoon.
Yeah, Kim Meyer, the author of Less Clutter, Less Noise.
I've got the book, and I'm loving it.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's a good little book. It's easy read, too. A very easy read.
All right. And then on January the 18th, Chad McCullum will be with us via Skype. He is a church planter from Michigan. We'll be talking about church planting starting from the ground up.
Parenthetically, and no matter where I put that book, it still doesn't look like clutter. So...
Steve, that is riveting.
Hey, listen, I hear angels twittering up there. They enjoy it.
Well, it's not angels to me, but apparently I'm not drinking what you're drinking, Steve. All right. Hey, Heath.
Yeah,
Where can our listeners find you on the internet,
Where can we
man?
find
Come
you?
on.
They can find me at heathmullican.com. I'm all over Twitter. And they can actually follow our new church at Oakway United.
All right. Brother Steve, can they come to your house for Thanksgiving?
They can show up there. I won't be there, but they can show up there. No, we are. I want to really emphasize my pastorses@gmail.com because that, my friends, is Google Plus. You can Google Plus me. If you like Facebook, you're going to love Google Plus.
You are a Google Plus fan,
You like
aren't you?
I'm a
Facebook,
missionary.
but hate interaction with people because there's no one there. You will love Google Plus. I'm sorry. That's not a dig
Yes,
at
you're
you.
sorry.
No,
yes,
that's a
your
dig.
testimony. You
Matthew
are
has
sorry.
just been lobbing scuds
all day, and they all have my name on them.
They do,
But
man.
you
If
know,
you
where's
like
the
social
glory in that?
networks-
So you're beating up on an old fat man.
Matthew's
I mean, you know,
taking Steve out.
If
well,
you
what's
like-
next? Shoving babies around in a nursery?
No, I'm just saying.
What is it?
That's not a you. This is a Google Plus. If you like social networking but don't like being social or networking, come to Google Plus.
That's not true. Every week
I
I get
agree.
4 or 5 extra people that are.
I like
Now,
Google
seriously,
Plus,
Google
too. I'm
Plus,
teasing.
talk about your meeting
My
last
heart's
week
broken,
that you
man.
had
It was
after our
cool,
show.
yeah.
After our show last week, the Wesleyan headquarters, the youth department sponsors fuel for youth pastors. In February, we had a Google Plus hangout, and had so many people couldn't get in, like we were full. And we had consistently 6 to 10 people in there for an hour just talking. It was great. We had people from every time zone in North America.
Yeah, it really is a neat way that does, and the way that it knows who's the primary person is at the time of the conversation. It can be a little wonky, but how it picks up that person.
And Jeremy
Yes.
Gertis says
Yes.
he's in Google Plus,
And he
so
says
go
that
find him.
he follows Steve, and Steve has good stuff. There you are, Steve. You have a witness.
Jeremy and Steven Sheets.
Yes.
Those
Brilliant,
guys,
brilliant
all the
guys.
time, they're putting out the best stuff on there. It's worth joining Google Plus
Yeah,
just to
I'm
have access
there.
to
I
their
totally
stuff.
agree. I do. I just
totally
tease it
agree. It
because
sounded like
the
it, brother.
The
Matthew?
poor old Google Plus is underused. Like if people if we could get everybody to jump ship, I think it'd be awesome.
You don't have to back up. I still love you. I have
Oh,
that
I love
kind
you
of
too,
Christian
Steve.
love, baby.
Hey, we've got
love?
another week on our giveaway. So on Facebook, we don't have a Google Plus page. I've started working on it, but I haven't got it set up yet for our show. But on Facebook, if you will like our show, if you will comment about the show in some way, tag us and say that you'd like to be entered to win. We're still running the contest to give away the book, A Pocket Full of Questions. So we're doing that. You can find me at MatthewTG.com. That's where I am.
And on the book giveaway, it's not just that book, but we have 2 copies of Organics by Dr. Weitzel. And so we have like 4 or 5 people that have entered so far. And so, again, like us this week, like the show, and we'll put you in for the drawing of those books. You can find me at facebook.com/AKC64. We thank you all for joining us. We hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. As always, all the stories that we have discussed, we've linked you to. You can go to our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com, or better yet, leave Heath a voicemail by calling 3049-TEOLOGY and thank him for wearing his Wisconsin Badger shirt. That's 304-986-5649. And Steve, we thank you.
Oh,
We thank you.
it was my. Could I
For
just
Google
take
Plus
a few
and
minutes?
for being with us
Could I
today.
just take a few minutes and tell
No,
you
you
how
can't.
thankful?
We have to close
it's
the show.
Thanksgiving. You surely could.
This is the Kanye West moment. Go ahead. I'm going to let you finish here in a second, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, that's
There's
all right.
nothing
That's
to
all
say.
right. I'm done. I'm so thankful that I'm done too.
And we do appreciate all of you for putting up with our nonsense.
The show used to be so much fun.
Yeah.
It used to have an intellectual patina to it, kind of an air of.
I don't even go to the ballet. What you talking about? All right.
Mom, they kidnapped me and made me be a part of this.
Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
We're off the air.
Sayonara.
We're leaving. Happy
Auf
Thanksgiving.
Wiedersehen.
Hey, there's a video
Aloha.
that I found on YouTube of the Trolololo song slowed
Oh.
down to
Sumter.
1/800th of the time.
Oh, no.
So as he sings, it's.
Sumter says, I
Well-
stayed up till 11 for this.
I personally have one more thing now to be thankful for. that
Oh,
that
please
you
do.
haven't
Now we're
put
still
down.
on the air, so go.
Oh,
No. I mean that you haven't
He-
put that
he-
slowed down
He
version
has something
of the
to be thankful
Tra-la-la.
for, but he doesn't want to talk about it on the air. Is that
That's
what you're
right.
saying?
That's right.
All right.
I've got a testimony. this pointing this big pearl?
Oh, here it is.
Oh,
This is
no.
going to be it, isn't it?
Look, the hand sweeps, and you can see the audience like a Benny
Look at
Hinn,
that. Look at that.
like a Benny Hinn
That
crusade.
is
They're falling all
scary.
over.
That looks like a robot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really does.
It doesn't look like a real person.
It looks like a robot.
Big boys don't cry. Big boys don't cry. You
Has
remember
he even
that
started
song?
singing yet?
Do you remember that song?
He is singing.
Huh? I'm not in love. You don't remember that where
Hey,
he says
play the regular one.
big boys don't
I
cry?
will.
That'll make me.
Send me the link to this. I love it.
I don't love it.
When I drink drain cleaner, I want to watch
This is
it.
like Marcy's worst nightmare.
Marcy
right here.
loves this one.
Oh man.
Let's do the real time one.
Can we download this and like rip the audio from it, put it on a CD, and send it to her for Christmas?
We can do a whole show just him doing this at one at a time.
Yeah.